I know how to make your daughter walk again, the young nurse told the billionaire. It's been 2 weeks since Mr. Damien, a wealthy billionaire, watched his 8-year-old daughter, Alina, become paralyzed after a tragic car accident. Confined to a wheelchair, Alina's life had been turned upside down, and despite the best efforts of specialists, nothing had worked. Desperate for any hope, Mr. Damien brought her to the hospital again, seeking more answers, but the doctors were once again unable to offer anything that could change her fate. Mr. Damien had thrown money, influence, and every possible resource at the problem. Specialists from around the world had come to assess Alina's condition. The best of the best, they'd promised, but with each passing day, it became clear that the best wasn't enough. There were no breakthroughs, no miracles. Only doctors shaking their heads, offering their apologies, and telling him what he had already come to know, that his daughter would never walk again. That was when Diana walked in. She was young, no older than 22, yet she carried herself with a quiet confidence that instantly caught Mr. Damien's attention. The harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital room did nothing to diminish the calm determination in her eyes. She stood at the door for a moment, taking in the scene with a measured gaze, before stepping forward. I know how to make your daughter walk again, she said softly, her voice unwavering. Mr. Damien froze, disbelief flickering across his face. The words didn't register at first, as if his mind couldn't quite process what she had said. His eyes darted to his daughter, who lay motionless in the bed. The disbelief in his expression deepened. It had been weeks since he'd heard any words of hope. Real hope. But this nurse, this young woman, was offering him something different, something he hadn't dared to hope for. She stepped into the room fully, and Mr. Damien could see that her expression wasn't one of pity, but of absolute certainty. It wasn't arrogance, nor was it empty optimism. It was something far rarer, belief in the possibility of the impossible. He could feel the skepticism rising inside him, but there was also a flicker of something else. A desperate need to believe, to hold on to even the smallest thread of hope. His heart twisted as he looked back at Alina, her small body so fragile, her once playful nature reduced to silence. His voice was hoarse, filled with a mixture of exhaustion and disbelief. What do you mean? Everyone's tried everything. There's nothing left. Diana didn't flinch. She simply nodded. There's a breakthrough therapy, she explained, her words deliberate, each one carrying weight. It's experimental. It's not approved yet, but I've seen it work in clinical trials abroad. If we act fast, if we don't wait, there's a real chance for her recovery. Mr. Damien's eyes narrowed. Experimental? Approved? What's that supposed to mean? Are you asking me to trust you? Trust something that's not even recognized by the medical community. Diana's gaze remained steady, unwavering. I'm asking you to trust me, yes. But more than that, I'm asking you to trust that there's still hope for your daughter. I've seen this work. I've seen it change lives. And I believe it can change hers. For a moment, Mr. Damien was silent. His mind raced, but it felt as if everything had slowed. His thoughts were a swirl of conflicting emotions: anger, disbelief, desperation. But something about her presence, her confidence, made him pause. What other choice did he have? The doctors had failed him, and the specialists had nothing left to offer. What do you want in return? He asked, his voice low, almost defeated. Diana's response was immediate and simple. Nothing. Just let me try. Let me help her. The room was still. Time seemed to stretch for a long moment as Mr. Damien processed her words. He had reached the point of exhaustion, where every possible option had been explored, every door knocked on, only to be met with a firm no. And now this woman, this young nurse, was offering him something he wasn't sure he could believe. His heart ached with the weight of the decision. How many times had he thought he had nothing left to lose, only to find that there was always one more thing, the smallest glimmer of hope? Was this another false promise? Could he risk his daughter's future on something unproven? But then he looked at Alina again. She was motionless, her fragile body wrapped in a hospital gown, her small hands resting limp at her sides. Her life had been stolen from her in an instant. She deserved a chance. They both deserved a chance. Mr. Damien's voice was a whisper when he finally spoke. All right, do what you have to do. But I'm holding you to this. You'll give my daughter a chance. Diana nodded, her expression not one of triumph, but of quiet determination. I will, Mr. Damien. I promise you. I'll do everything I can. And just like that, with those few words, A sliver of hope began to crack through the darkness that had consumed Mr. Damien for the past 2 weeks. It wasn't a guarantee. It wasn't a promise of success. But it was hope, a hope he hadn't felt in far too long. As Diana began explaining the details of the experimental therapy, Mr. Damien listened intently, every word she spoke sinking into his soul. For the first time in weeks, he felt a flicker of something he had almost forgotten: belief. He knew the road ahead would be difficult. He knew the odds were stacked against them. But for the first time in a long while, Mr. Damien allowed himself to hope that his daughter's life could be restored. And with that, their journey toward the impossible began. The soft hum of machines in the hospital room seemed almost out of place, as though it was trying to mask the silence that had settled over the past 2 weeks. For most, the daily rhythm of life continued, but for Mr. Damien and his daughter, Alina, the world had become a still frame. Alina's once vibrant energy was now confined to the small hospital room where she sat, struggling to accept the reality that her body no longer responded to her will. Diana had arrived like a breath of fresh air, bringing with her an air of confidence and resolve that seemed so out of place in the otherwise sterile hospital setting. She wasn't just a nurse to Mr. Damien, she was the hope he had been looking for. With each passing day, her presence in the room was a reminder that there was still something more to fight for. The first session had been awkward. Alina's body, weakened and unused to movement, had stiffened in resistance. Her father watched as Diana guided her through the simple motions, encouraging her to flex her legs, to move her toes, as if every small shift might unlock something within her. It was frustrating for Alina, who could no longer comprehend how she had gone from running and playing to this painful stillness. But Diana's approach was different from anything Mr. Damien had witnessed before. Her manner was gentle, yet firm, a balance of compassion and discipline. She never pushed too hard, but she never let Alina slip into passivity either. With every slow movement, Diana's focus never wavered. She was patient but unyielding in her belief that Alina's body still held the potential to heal. Day after day, Diana guided Alina through a routine of stretching exercises, leg lifts, and muscle stimulation. At first, there were no visible changes. There were moments when Alina would stare blankly at her legs, frustration creasing her young face. But Diana's calm demeanor was unwavering. "One more try," she would say, always ready to encourage Alina through the next attempt, no matter how small. Mr. Damien had always been a man of action, a billionaire used to making decisions that affected entire industries. But this, watching his daughter fight against her own body, seeing her pain, was different. He felt helpless, unsure of how to provide the comfort she needed. But he watched Diana closely, desperate for any sign that there was progress, any shred of hope that he could cling to. It wasn't long before the smallest signs began to appear. At first, it was a slight twitch in Alina's toes, a movement so small that even Diana seemed unsure whether it was intentional. Mr. Damien's eyes were fixed on his daughter's feet as he stood in the corner of the room, holding his breath, praying that this was real. "Did you see that?" he asked, his voice tight with hope. Diana didn't respond right away. She had seen it, of course, but she knew better than to make any grand proclamations too soon. "We'll take it one step at a time," she said quietly, her voice the perfect mix of encouragement and restraint. As the days passed, those tiny signs turned into something more. One morning, after weeks of grueling therapy, Alina moved her legs slightly. Not much, but enough to make her father's heart leap in his chest. It was as though the walls around her body were finally beginning to crack. The same walls that had kept her locked in a state of stillness and silence now seemed less impenetrable. "Good job, Alina," Diana would say, always ready with words of affirmation, even when the progress seemed painfully slow. But even with these small improvements, the journey was far from easy. The therapy was grueling, and Alina's body often resisted the movement she once took for granted. There were tears. Sometimes from Alina, sometimes from Mr. Damien, who couldn't help but feel the weight of her struggle. The effort it took to move, to stretch, to even lift a leg, was monumental. Every session felt like a battle between hope and despair, progress and stagnation. There were days when Alina's legs trembled so violently she couldn't bear to continue. Her body fought against her mind, and Diana would have to gently, but firmly, convince her to keep going. "I know it hurts, but you're getting stronger," she would say, her voice soft yet unyielding. "Just one more minute. That's all I ask." Mr. Damien, for all his wealth and power, had never faced anything like this before. He had always been able to fix problems, whether they were business crises or family issues. But this was different. Watching his daughter in pain, watching her body fail her again and again, it was a kind of suffering he couldn't solve with money or influence. He could only watch, helpless, as Diana guided Alina through the pain, offering him the only thing that mattered: hope. It wasn't just Alina's physical body that was undergoing a transformation. Mr. Damien felt the shift in himself as well. His despair, though still present, was tempered by a new sense of purpose. Diana had sparked something within him, something more powerful than the wealth he had spent a lifetime accumulating. She had ignited a flicker of belief that perhaps, just perhaps, his daughter could walk again. It was a belief he had buried deep down for fear of disappointment, but now it was impossible to ignore. There were days when the emotional toll of the therapy took its own form. Mr. Damien would watch from the sidelines, feeling helpless, a knot tightening in his chest as he saw his daughter's face contorted in frustration or pain. He had been a man of action, a man who fixed things, but there was nothing he could do here except offer his support. It was a slow realization, one that burned through him like fire, that no amount of money or power could change what was happening in that room. Only time, patience, and the unwavering dedication of people like Diana could bring his daughter back to him. One afternoon, as Diana worked with Alina on her range of motion exercises, something incredible happened. Alina's leg moved. Just slightly, but enough for both Mr. Damien and Diana to see it. The slightest flex, the smallest stretch of muscle. The hope that had been a faint ember before suddenly sparked, growing brighter, fed by the belief that the impossible might just be within reach. Diana's face lit up with quiet pride as she watched the movement. "That's it, Alina," she said softly, her voice filled with warmth. "You're doing it. You're making progress." Alina's expression was still one of struggle, her face flushed with the effort, but the flicker of pride in her eyes was undeniable. She wasn't giving up. Neither was Diana. As the weeks wore on, Alina's progress continued, slow but steady. The twitching became more pronounced, and the flexing of her legs began to last longer. She moved her toes with more purpose, then her feet, then her ankles. She could feel the muscles waking up, reconnecting to her mind as though they had been in a deep sleep and were finally stirring to life. Through it all, Diana never wavered. Her commitment to Alina's recovery never faltered, even on the days when the progress was so small it seemed like nothing at all. Diana had learned that the road to recovery wasn't just physical, it was emotional, too. There were setbacks. There were moments when it felt as though they were back at square one, but Diana's belief in Alina never changed. Every step forward counts, she would remind both of them, her voice a gentle reassurance that kept them both going. And as Mr. Damien watched his daughter slowly, cautiously, begin to regain control of her body, his hope began to grow, too. The road ahead was still long and uncertain, but for the first time in weeks, he had a reason to believe that his daughter could, one day, walk again. The road to recovery was a painful one, but it was a journey they would take together, step by painstaking step. And with Diana by their side, the impossible seemed just a little more possible. The air in the hospital room was thick with anticipation that morning, an invisible tension that hung in the space between father and daughter, between hope and disbelief. 4 weeks now, Alina had fought against the paralysis that had taken her ability to walk, inching forward with tiny, painful steps that hardly seemed to promise anything. Every day had been a battle, and for Mr. Damien, it felt like an eternity, an endless cycle of hope and despair. He had seen the slow, excruciating process of Alina's recovery, and each time she moved her toes, each twitch of her legs had been a small victory in the long, uncertain road to healing. But today, there was something different in the air. Alina had been working with Diana, her legs still weak, but showing signs of improvement. It had been a grueling few weeks, but Diana had remained steadfast, a source of endless encouragement. Today, however, Diana could feel it, the shift, the change. The energy in the room felt different. There was a quiet confidence in the air, and it was contagious. For the first time, Diana believed that today could be the day. "All right, Alina," Diana said softly, as she stood at the foot of the bed, looking at the young girl who had become so much more than just a patient. She was a fighter. "Are you ready?" Alina looked at her, her small face lined with concentration, her eyes betraying the fear she had of failing yet again. She had come so far. So many setbacks, so many moments of pain, but here she was, still trying, still hoping. With a deep breath, Alina nodded. Mr. Damien stood by the door, his eyes fixed on his daughter, his heart thudding painfully in his chest. Every part of him wanted to believe that his daughter could walk again, but his mind had been conditioned to fear the worst. He had seen her struggle every day, heard her cries of frustration, witnessed the unrelenting pain of her body trying to break free from its own limitations. But today was different. He could feel it. Alina swung her legs over the side of the bed, her feet dangling just above the floor. There was a moment, just a fleeting second, where she hesitated, unsure if her body would allow her to stand. Her legs were weak, trembling slightly from the strain of simply sitting up. But Diana was there, guiding her, steadying her with a soft hand on her shoulder. "Don't rush it," Diana said gently. "Take your time. We've worked hard for this moment." Alina nodded again, her breathing shallow. Slowly, she planted her feet flat on the floor, the cold tile pressing against the soles of her feet, grounding her in a way that was both familiar and terrifying. Her legs wobbled beneath her as she tried to find her balance, her hands gripping the edge of the bed for support. A deep breath escaped her lips, and for a moment, she closed her eyes, letting the silence of the room engulf her. Mr. Damien's breath caught in his throat as he watched his daughter. His heart pounded in his chest as he fought to contain his emotions. He had been here before, watching her try, watching her fail. But today, there was something different in her, something he hadn't seen before. There was determination in her eyes, something fierce, something unyielding. This time, she wasn't just going through the motions. This time, she was fighting with everything she had. Diana crouched down beside her, her voice soft but filled with an unshakable belief. "You've got this, Alina. I know you can do it." Alina's face twisted in concentration as she pressed all her weight into her legs, willing them to hold her. Her knees buckled slightly, and for a moment, it seemed like she might fall. But she didn't. With a trembling breath, she found her strength. Her body shook with the effort, but she held herself upright, refusing to let herself collapse. And then it happened. With a deep breath, Alina shifted her weight forward. Her feet shuffled, one in front of the other, her body swaying slightly as she tried to find her footing. The first step was unsteady, the kind of step that could easily be mistaken for a stumble, but it was a step nonetheless. It was a movement she had thought she would never make again. For a moment, there was silence. No one moved, no one spoke. The entire room seemed to hold its breath, as if the very world was waiting for this moment to unfold. And then Alina took another step. It was small, it was fragile, but it was enough. Mr. Damien's breath caught in his throat as tears welled in his eyes. His mind couldn't fully process what he was seeing. His little girl, his daughter, who had been confined to a wheelchair for weeks, was standing. She was walking. And with each step she took, her face transformed, her fear melting away, replaced by a sense of wonder and disbelief. There was joy in her eyes, a radiant joy that only someone who had fought so hard for this moment could understand. Alina's legs wobbled beneath her, but she didn't stop. She kept moving, one step after another. The room was filled with the sound of her unsteady footsteps, the tiny, tentative movements that were the culmination of weeks of therapy, of pain, of hope. Her face was flushed, but it wasn't just from the exertion. It was the flush of triumph, of determination. It was the flush of a miracle. "Alina," Mr. Damien whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. He couldn't believe it. This was the moment he had been praying for, the moment he had hoped for but never truly believed would come. Alina's eyes were locked on him now, her gaze filled with a fierce joy that made Mr. Damien's heart ache. She was still shaky, still unsure, but there was no doubt in her expression. She was walking. His little girl was walking again. And then, with a final, shaky step, Alina reached out to her father, her arms trembling as she stretched them toward him. Mr. Damien stepped forward, his hands trembling as he reached out to catch her. He scooped her up in his arms, holding her tight, as if he could somehow protect her from the world, from the fragility of the moment. His chest heaved with the force of his emotions, his tears spilling freely now, as he whispered, "You did it, Alina. You did it." Diana stood in the background, watching the scene unfold, a quiet smile tugging at her lips. She had believed in Alina from the very first moment she saw her. She had known that this day would come, even when the world seemed to doubt it. And now, watching the little girl who had once been confined to a wheelchair walk toward her father, Diana couldn't help but feel a profound sense of pride. She had witnessed a miracle. Alina was walking. The impossible had become possible. As Mr. Damien held his daughter, his tears falling freely, he realized that nothing in the world could have prepared him for this moment. The road to recovery had been long and grueling, but this moment, was worth everything. It was a reminder that even in the darkest times, hope could still shine through. And for the first time in a long while, Mr. Damien truly believed that anything was possible. The hospital room was quieter than it had been in weeks. The soft hum of the machines, the quiet rustle of the sheets, and the gentle click of Diana's shoes on the polished floor were the only sounds that filled the space. It had been days since Alina's miraculous recovery, since the moment when she had taken her first steps, and since the weight of a lifetime of pain had been lifted from the shoulders of Mr. Damien. Now, Alina was home, her joy radiating in every movement as she walked, something that had seemed impossible only days ago. Her progress was astonishing, and even the doctors had been amazed by the transformation. But there was one person who knew better than anyone what had made this recovery possible: Diana. Mr. Damien had been watching her since the day Alina had stood for the first time. He had seen how Diana, though young, carried herself with the quiet strength of someone much older. Her unwavering belief in Alina, the relentless hours she had spent working with the girl, pushing her through the pain, had made the impossible happen. Diana hadn't just given Alina the gift of walking again. She had given his family back their future. But how could he express that? How could he ever repay her for this miracle? Mr. Damien had spent the last few days in quiet reflection, feeling the weight of his gratitude settling heavily on his heart. His mind raced with options. Gifts, words, acknowledgments, but none of them seemed like enough. He had always prided himself on being a man who could solve problems, who could make the impossible happen with a combination of will and wealth. But this was different. How do you repay someone for the impossible? Finally, he had settled on something that felt right. The gesture wasn't just about money. It was about showing Diana that he understood the enormity of what she had done for his family. It was late in the afternoon when he finally approached Diana, who was sitting by Alina's bedside, a gentle smile on her face as she spoke softly to the little girl. The glow of the setting sun filtered through the blinds, casting a warm, golden light across the room. It was a peaceful moment, a moment that Mr. Damien knew he would cherish for the rest of his life. He stood at the door, watching them for a moment, feeling a swell of emotion. He had never been one for words, not the kind that truly mattered. But today he knew he had to speak. "Diana," he said, his voice steady but filled with gratitude. She turned toward him, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, as if she, too, was unsure how to approach the heavy emotions between them. "Mr. Damien," she replied softly. There was a warmth in her voice now, something that hadn't been there before. The distance between them had closed in the days since Alina's recovery. I don't know how to begin to thank you," he said, his words tentative, as if he had been rehearsing them in his mind for days. "You've given us a gift that I cannot even put into words. You've done the impossible. You've brought my daughter back to me." His voice cracked slightly, the weight of the emotion catching him off guard. Diana stood and walked over to him, her eyes kind but filled with a quiet sadness, as if she too understood the enormity of the moment. "You don't need to thank me, Mr. Damien," she said gently. "I was just doing my job." He shook his head, the intensity of his gratitude only deepening. "No, Diana, you don't understand. What you've done goes beyond any job, any payment, any obligation. What you've done is something that cannot be measured. You've changed our lives. You've given my daughter her future back." Diana's eyes softened as she looked at him, and for a moment, they shared a silent understanding. She had come into their lives as a nurse, but she had left an indelible mark on their hearts. She had believed in Alina when no one else did. She had never given up, even when things seemed hopeless. Diana had shown them what true dedication, compassion, and belief could accomplish. But Mr. Damien wasn't done. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a simple, plain envelope, the edges slightly crumpled as though it had been carried around for days. He handed it to her, his expression unreadable, but his heart laid bare. Diana took the envelope with tentative fingers, her gaze flickering to his face as she carefully opened it. Inside was a check, one with more zeros than she had ever imagined. $5 million. The sum was so large that for a moment, it seemed like a dream. She blinked, her throat tightening as she tried to comprehend what she was seeing. Mr. Damien, I can't accept this. It's too much. I never asked for anything. I just wanted to help. I know you didn't, he said, his voice firm yet gentle. But this isn't just a payment for your work. This is for your dedication, for your belief. This is for giving us back our daughter. His eyes shone with a mixture of emotion, gratitude, awe, and admiration. Diana stood there, the check trembling in her hands. She had worked with many patients over the years, but nothing like this. Nothing had ever touched her heart in this way. She had always approached her job with professionalism, with compassion, but this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. She could feel the weight of the check in her hands, but more than that, she could feel the weight of the trust, the faith Mr. Damien was placing in her. For the first time in her life, Diana realized that what she had done had not only changed the lives of others, it had changed her own life as well. I don't know what to say, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. This is so much more than I could ever have hoped for. Mr. Damien smiled, a soft, understanding smile. You've given us more than we could ever repay. This is just a small way for me to express my gratitude. Please, accept it. Diana's hands shook as she held the check, her eyes filling with tears. She had never expected this. She had never expected anything. She had only wanted to help, to make a difference in someone's life. But now, standing here with a gift so generous, she realized that the impact of her actions had far surpassed anything she could have imagined. And in that moment, Diana knew that her life had changed, too. She had given everything to help Alina walk again, but in return, she had received a gift beyond measure, a gift that would shape her future in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. Thank you, she said, her voice breaking as the tears fell freely. Thank you for believing in me, for trusting me. Mr. Damien nodded, his own eyes moist with emotion. Thank you for believing in Alina. You've given us back more than we could have ever hoped for. And in that quiet moment, as the two of them stood there, father and nurse, benefactor and recipient, both of their lives were irrevocably changed. Alina's miracle had been a testament to the power of hope, hard work, and belief. But now, Diana's life was forever transformed, not just by the gift of money, but by the realization that her work, her unwavering dedication, had touched lives in ways she had never imagined. As Diana looked down at the check once more, she understood that this wasn't just a reward. It was a symbol of the incredible journey they had all shared and the unbreakable bond that had been formed. A bond that could never be broken, no matter how much time passed. In the end, it wasn't just the miracle of Alina walking again that changed their lives. It was the miracle of believing in the impossible and in each other. If you enjoyed this heartwarming story of hope, perseverance, and transformation, please make sure to like and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content like this. We would love to hear your thoughts on the story and how it all ended. What do you think of Diana's dedication, Mr. Damien's gratitude, and Alina's miraculous recovery? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the story? Your feedback means the world to us and helps us create even better content. Also, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, and let us know how the story resonated with you. We look forward to reading your thoughts. Thank you for being part of this journey.